Recovery is stupendous.
Achievable.
Hope.
Freedom.
Empowering.
It's unique to everyone.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Getting a new lease on life.
It's finding restoration after you fall down.
Recovery is having the freedom to enjoy life.
For me, it was finding a way to really love myself.
My recovery is possible in part because of my own sense of purpose.
Welcome to Montana's Peer Network Recovery Talks podcast. I'm Jim Haney, Executive Director, and today I have a very special guest with me, Greg Arciello. He is the president of Montana's Peer Network. Greg, thanks so much for taking the time to be on.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for having me. I think the topic that we're going to visit means a lot to me, and being a returning citizen as I am, will be interesting to have a visit with you and discuss some topics on that today.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about criminal justice support, kind of a broad topic, but it's all going to be centered around criminal justice and recovery and supports. And this has been in the news lately. There's been some buzz going on, and so we thought, yeah, this would be a good one. And I couldn't think of anybody better than to have Greg on to talk about the subject. So one of the things that's been in the news lately is the new governor, Montana Governor Greg Arciello, when he announced his budget back in January, he announced that he wanted to put $23 million towards like criminal justice reforms and services. And did you read that, Greg?
Yeah, I saw that same thing. I was sort of excited to see that the new governor was interested in doing some community-minded criminal justice support.
Yeah, and he outlined some things like treatment courts, expanding treatment courts, district courts, 14 new probation officers, and then treatment. I can't remember exactly how he said it, but it was like treatment for substance use was included in that. And I take that to be meaning some peer support. Probably going to be included in there. I know for a number of years, Montana's Peer Network has been involved, and some of our members are involved in different re-entry councils around the state. We have done some work in this area. We actually created a training for criminal justice peer supporters, and we've done presentations out at Deer Lodge on what that could look like, peer support within a prison setting. And then, we had for a couple of years, we had a contract in Gallatin County where we actually one of our peer supporters with a criminal justice background went into the detention center, took our Healthy Minds, Healthy Bodies workbook in, and did groups on different pods, men and women pods. So we've been here for a long time at this place sort of waiting. And so I agree, it was really refreshing to see the governor announced that this was going to be one of his priorities and something he was putting in the budget.
Yeah, and I think it's I think it's something that's needed with the jails and the prison system in Montana being full. We have to find other avenues to be able to take care of addict inmates as well as nonviolent inmates, right? So,
Right.
It's going to be a really good way to be able to start to do that, because I don't think that everybody needs to be locked up.
Right. Let's talk about that a little bit, right? So a person, has a couple of arrests, minor possession, controlled substance, boom, they get a 5-year sentence, right? Are we really helping that individual? Are we really helping society by putting them in prison? I mean, that's I think long been a question, and I'm no expert on it. Greg, you have far more insight than I do, but as I look at that as a person in recovery, I think I'm not sure that that's really the best route to go if someone has a substance use issue, putting them in prison, and then all the trauma that goes with that and felonies, right?
So I think, trauma and what it's a ripple effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a twice convicted felon and a guy that has spent, I was under 14 years. I don't disagree that I totally agree that we have to pay for the crimes that we do.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
the other side of that is not everybody should be locked up. In the ripple effect, we take a guy that's an addict and alcoholic, and we put him in jail. He loses a job. His families might have to go on public assistance, and we create this mess, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
that person in the community, under probation and parole, under a drug treatment court, or anything like that, then he can still work and go to counseling, go to AA or 12-step program meetings, and be a productive member of society. I think maybe when locking people up, that we should lock people up that we're afraid of, not lock people up that we're mad at.
That's a good point. Very good point, Greg. I think that's pretty true. I think that's also true of people with mental illness. I think the idea of locking up somebody who has paranoid schizophrenia is sometimes the way society approaches it, rather than thinking about how can we help support this person.
That's a really good point, right? Is that I don't know if the prisons and jails are equipped to be able to handle that, right? So what do?
Right.
Do we lock them up in a room and give them a shot of Halidol and
Right.
hope they sleep it off, right?
Exactly. Because we're afraid. Because we're afraid, right? Because we're afraid of them. Yeah.
100 years ago, right? We took the people with mental illness and we put them in institutions, and never, pretty much that way they were away from society. And
that's right.
Today, with medication that we have, with the support groups that we have for the people with mental illness, then we should be able to help them reacclimate back into society.
Exactly. And I think, you mentioned something a little earlier there too, the families. So somebody, gets convicted, they're going to prison. What about the family? What about their experience? That's traumatic in itself. You have children, the loss of a parent. That goes into, we know from things like the ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. That's actually one of the questions. That's one of the ACEs that they ask. Growing up, did you have one of your parents that were incarcerated? But we don't address that in society. We take this person away. And it's again, I'm going to bring up the mental health thing. I mean, it's no different. In this country, about 100 years ago, we built state hospitals, state psychiatric hospitals all over this country. And we put them outside major cities. You go into Chicago, the state facility is in Elgin. Elgin's like 25 miles from Chicago. You think about Montana. Where's our state hospital? It's not in Butte.
No.
It's outside Butte because we're afraid of these people. We built these buildings and we put a prison out there and right? Like I think you hit it. I think you hit it right there. It's about fear.
Fear and not being, and I think some of it, maybe not totally educated on the whole.
Yes.
I don't want to say people that are not educated, because that's not. I mean, judges are educated in what they do, right?
Sure.
People that don't, not understanding the total realm of mental illness.
Right.
I mean, if it was just about yelling at the person and telling him not to, or her to not do that again, we would do that.
Right.
That does not work.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that we've evolved now and we have begun to understand the long-term impacts of locking people up, whether it's in, prison, jail, a state hospital. I think we've learned that doesn't work, and we're starting to see this change seems to be starting to happen. What are some things, when you think about that, Greg? I mean, what are some things you think would be beneficial to communities, to individuals, to families? What kind of things would you like to see?
What I like to see, I think that one of the most important things for people returning back from an incarceration is, we have, having support, right? And housing would be an important thing. jobs, the ability to earn a living, right? And, and
right.
a support group and have, those kind of things. Like, a lot of times what happens, you get released. A lot of times if you're released, you're still on probation and parole, so, you have that to deal with, and then there's all these fines and, supervision. How do we support those guys when they can't be, I'm not saying that we should support them 100%, but I also think that we just need to be able to find that balance of getting them on their feet, teaching them a job skill if they don't have a job skill in the system.
Right.
I mean, I think, 40, 50, 60 years ago, people that were incarcerated learned a trade, and they were able to go back, and when they got out, they were able to, hopefully get into that. So
Right. Yeah. I think you hit on a few things there. For me, it sort of came to mind. I mean, I think this is accurate. United States has more people incarcerated than any other country in the world, right? Isn't that true?
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, right. So we're learning, hey, this doesn't really work, and we're not really teaching people life skills, so that when they get out. But then when people do get out, we penalize them even though they've already done their time, right? So we say, you committed a crime, we're going to give you a sentence, and this is how you're going to pay for that or repay that to society. So you serve your time, you get out. But then we say, well, you have a felony, so you can't live in government subsidized housing. Hey, you have a felony, so you can't work here. Hey, you have a felony, so it's this blocks your way, this blocks your way, that blocks your way. I mean, it's a nonsensical system. And again, this is coming from somebody I don't have a felony, I don't have a criminal justice background, but just from afar, I'm looking at this in terms of recovery through that sort of lens, and I'm like, you're blocking the person's route, even though they already served their time for whatever they did, whatever rule they broke. That to me has never made a whole lot of sense. So I hear what you're saying when you talk about housing and a job. I mean, that should be front and center for people, right? I mean,
speaking from experience, with two felony convictions, it was hard to find a job. When you check that box that says that you have been convicted of a felony, they don't look any further than that. And there are a lot of places that hire convicted felons, but those jobs are not always the jobs that a guy can make money, work and make a living wage.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. There was a place I know in Bozeman that used to always hire people from the pre-release center, and great, that's great. But you can't live in Bozeman working at a cafe. You're not going to earn enough money to pay rent to live in a place like Bozeman. You're bound to fail. It can't work.
No, and that becomes the deal, right? And that becomes the issue: is how do we? It's hard enough for people that don't have felony convictions to be able to, get a good paying job and to be able to live. But you add that to it. There's Montana is one of the few states where, as a convicted felon, you're still eligible to vote. You know what I mean? So I was just thinking, I just looked up something that says, prison, parole, and probation operations generate an $81 billion annual cost to U.S. taxpayers.
Wow.
So if we could figure out to half that and get these guys reacclimated, because most of the guys here's the deal, 90% of the people that are incarcerated are going to be released back into the community. Right.
At some point.
We have to know that they're coming back out.
Right.
And the guy that committed a crime at 20 years old is not the same guy at 40 years old.
Right.
Now there's exceptions to that. But the majority of these guys or gals are going to come out out in sight. They're going to be our neighbors. They're going to be in the grocery store with you. No, you don't know who they are, and so we have, we try to figure a way to help these guys and gals when they get out.
Right.
And then they have to, they have to take the initiative, right? They have to be able to work hard to be able to do that.
Right. Personal responsibility definitely plays a role. Yeah.
It may be getting that job at the diner and working 6 months, and then becoming a waiter or a head cook, or you have 6 months of work history. Now you can go to the next place and do that. And that's the other side, I think, of returning citizens, is to say you can't have everything now.
Well, that's a big part of it, right? Is peer support, which was kind of the next I was going to ask you about. Peer support and the role of peer support in the criminal justice system. Is it appropriate for somebody who, just gets out of Deer Lodge or the women's prison, within the first few months, should they go and become a peer supporter?
Since you're asking me that, I would say no.
Yeah, see, that's my reaction too, Greg. That's exactly my reaction. My reaction, right, is because I think peer support is about your experience in recovery. So give it some time so you have the life experience to share with somebody. If I just got out of the state hospital, I don't really have enough experience out to really help someone else. What I can help them with is the inside, but I can't really help them with the outside. I don't know. What are your thoughts there?
I agree with that. I totally, and I don't disagree that they have something to offer to somebody, but to be able to sit down one-on-one and to guide that as a peer support specialist to a peer, you can have some insight, some ideas, but to be able to help them in that regard, no. It's a learned experience, and it's like being in a 12-step program. We all have stories, right? But that's not helpful to a person. I don't feel that it's all that helpful to tell war stories to help the next person. It's nice to say, yes, I did that. This is how I don't do that anymore.
Right.
And find that anything worthwhile takes hard work and time.
Yes, it does.
Right?
It does. In hiking, we say when you're hiking and you're going up a peak or you're going up a ridge, you got to work for the good ones, because when you get to the top of that mountain or the top of that ridge, the views are going to be spectacular, but there's no elevator to the top of that 10,000 foot peak. There's no escalator. You have to walk 1 foot in front of the other, and it's going to suck. It's going to be hard. You're going to be tired, right? So yeah. I mean, you got to have the time. You got to have the experience to really truly help people. And when I say no, I don't think it's appropriate, I'm only saying that based on the time frame being so short. The Board of Behavioral Health set a time frame of 2 years. Now I have no idea what 2 years is all about, and like some people obviously be ready before that, some people will be ready after that, but that is the rule, 2 years, and that I just don't think someone is actually ready to do the work. And I think that when people want to do the work, say they only have a few months, they've gotten out of incarceration, I feel like it's more because they don't want to focus on themselves and they want to focus on someone else.
I somewhat agree with that. It's a lot easier for me to focus on someone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And so, because when you're returning, you're reacclimating to everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we take a guy that has been locked up for the last 20 years, right, and comes out tomorrow, I mean, that world has changed so much in the 20 years, right? Or even for 1 year. So, we have to work. I can only be helpful if I take care of me first. And I can take care of me and work on me and get through that, then I'm going to be able to help that next person. And,
Right.
I certainly, when I started doing some peer support stuff years ago, I probably wasn't really at the point where I should be doing that. And learned a lot of hard lessons through that. Is 2 years the magic number? I don't know. It's like, 12-step program, they always say no major changes in 1 year.
Right.
Well,
Right.
That's not, so.
Right.
So, I agree. I think that if a person that's a returning citizen that wants to come out and wants to be in the peer support industry, you sort of maybe have to intern a little bit, right? You know what I mean? Maybe you go sit and learn it and work on that, and then be able to eventually, after the 2 years,
Right.
do that.
I remember when I was very early on in my peer supporter career, I was running a drop-in center. I had a guy come in, big guy, I don't know, 6'3" or 4", 300 pounds, comes in, and we sit down in the office, and he says, I was referred over to your program. He says, but I got to tell you something. I said, okay, what's that? And he said, well, I just got out of Deer Lodge. I've been in there 20 years. He's like, I murdered somebody. And you mentioned this earlier, the fear thing,
Right.
And I every muscle in my body sort of seized up, like it was a shock to me. It was a shock. I mean, it was a shock that he was so open about it, but for him, that was important. He wanted to sort of put that out, and I said, okay. And he said, but I need some support. And anyway, I mean, I got to know the guy and provided him support for a long time. He came into the program and he didn't always share that with everybody. He wasn't always like open, but I had a lot of good conversations with him. Now, I couldn't relate to being incarcerated, but he was trying. I mean, he was trying to make a new life for himself, And many years later, I had another guy, same thing, served 20 years, murdered somebody when he was young. These guys were older, like you said. I mean, they weren't the same people, clearly, But the fear thing, it got me thinking about that, and it was my own fear. It was like, what? Okay, the guy killed somebody 20 years ago. He's not here to kill me. He's here for peer support. Like I had to get over my own little thing first, and just examine why do I feel so tense, like he's not going to harm me. And I appreciated the honesty, really, when I was able to look back at it. In the moment, it was just shocking.
Sure.
But, like the person did their time. They served their debt to society, however right? Like that's what we say. And now they're going to go make a life. And how do we support people? And if we're just afraid of people, right? If we operate from this place of fear, well, you can't live here, you can't work here, you can't do these things, then how do we really help people reacclimate into society? That's exactly. What, right? Like that's how I think of it. Like, well, then that's never going to happen. Then you're sort of pushing people back into that criminal activity.
And that's I think, I mean, I don't have any data on that, but I'll bet when you look at some of the recidivism, it was because of that. You know what I mean? And
sure.
I'll do that, and if I get locked up, I know that way of life.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to be rejected. I'm not going to be told I'm not this. I can go back and live in B unit in Deer Lodge and, do my little job and those kind of things. And that's not the way I believe that people should think. I knew a guy that was up he was up at the treatment center, and he was looking down into the Deer Lodge, and he was like, I can't wait till I get into Deer Lodge. You know what I mean? And I thought to myself,
wow.
Right? You're in one institution, and you think if I only got to that institution, my life would be better.
Wow.
And it's not, right? And that's
right.
That's the $1 million question is, right? Is how do we change that? And hopefully with the new budget that the governor's put out, that there'll be some money that we could help to start changing that way of thinking a little bit.
Exactly. And
I was thinking too, and I think I talked to you a little bit about this before. Is I've mentored a lot of guys that have come out, and the only touch to the real world they have is through television. Okay, you know what I mean? And their ideas are a little bit different, but I think I threw this idea out when I was talking to you a week ago or so about maybe we start, maybe we pay these guys when they're their jobs in prison, and then they pay the rent. They pay some money back into to the prison for their time there, and then whatever little bit's left over, they can bank. And when they get out, they have a little bit of a bank account. I mean, I don't know how that would all work, but it's just how do we support? Because what happens? These guys get out. They have, some of them they get gate money. They might have $100 in their pocket and a bus ticket.
Right, but where does that get you? Where's $100 get you? I mean,
and they get out at the bus station in Missoula. They have $100, and then they have to, they don't have a bank account, so they have to go to a check cashing place, and they're getting charged 15 or 20% to cash that. So now, now your $100's only $80, right? And a lot of times they charge you for the bus ticket. So now that was, there's $40 more off. So I mean, in all honesty, we put a guy out on the street with $40 and nowhere to go. I mean, if somebody gave me $40 and told me to go stand down in Missoula and go find a place to live and get a job and go check in with probation, I don't think I could do it.
Well, you can. I mean, the odds are stacked against you for sure, right? I mean, they're totally stacked against you. That's not even realistic. I mean, we have to get honest about it. And you mentioned like housing. I mean, what if we had, housing set up for people, and we had, peer supporters, people with a criminal justice background like yourself who worked with probation and parole to provide support as a person who went through that same system to say, well, these are the things that I did, but you got to have other things. You got to have the jobs got to be there, the housing, and $100. What's $100 going to get you? I mean, it's not really. That's not. It needs to be $1,000 in a bank account. Like, exactly. Right? Like $100 is like, that's, you might as well make it zero. I mean, it's so. Well, you were talking about that earlier,
wages and stuff like that. Some of these guys that come out with, certain crimes, they go to rent a place, that place is $400 a month. The guy that's going to rent to them and finds out their crime, all of a sudden that place is $800 a month. Right. People taking advantage of them. Exactly. So what if there was housing and a bank account was set up? Yeah. Because you have nowhere else to go.
Exactly.
I met the guy that came out, he didn't know how to turn on a washing machine.
Right.
And he didn't know how to grocery shop. Where does that fall? I mean, does that fall on the prison to teach them how to turn on a washing machine, or to the Department of Corrections? I don't know, but maybe. And I think there's some life classes that they take, when they're inside.
Right.
But you stick them out with that $100. Here's what they do: they go get a bottle and a bag of dope, and figure I'll have one night of whatever I'm going to go do. Right. And I'll deal with the consequence tomorrow.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, how different might it be if you tried, and gosh, I mean, you could even run a pilot project. You could pick one state or one prison, and you could say, okay, we're going to set up every single person who gets discharged here for a year, and we're going to give them $1,000 in a bank account. and with a card, with a ATM card, and we're going to give them a place to live, and we're going to give them a job, and then see over the course of 10 years, like what's the recidivism rate? Does it drop? I gotta think it would. I mean, I gotta think that it would drop dramatically if you're helping.
Because the critics on the other side of that are going to say, well, why should we pay for that, right? I mean, that's the other side, right? Play this advocate a little bit. Hey, why should I pay for that guy to come out? Well, it's costing, I don't know, $50,000 a year to house that inmate.
Yeah.
Okay, if I'm giving him $1,000 and he has a job, and we figure out the recidivism rate, we've just saved probably $45,000.
Right. Yeah, I don't know criminal justice like I do mental health, but here's some numbers for mental health. So it's like $538 a day, something in that neighborhood, for somebody to be at Montana State Hospital, the psychiatric hospital. $538 a day. And then if you take that, and the average stay, then you look up what the average stay is. So if a person stays there a month, okay, all right, we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars, right? So if you go 538 times 30, that's $16,000 for 1 month. Okay,
that's one person.
That's one person. There's 150 people there.
So times 150. Now you're at $2 million a month.
Yeah. So what if we took half of that? What if we took 20% of that and said $4,000 we will put towards you when you discharge? And that money will be to get you a place, get you some clothes, get you a bank account. We're going to put a little bit of money in there. What if that's 1 week. That's the equivalent of 1 week in the state hospital. So I have to imagine prisons numbers got to be somewhere in that neighborhood. I don't know what the number is, but somebody out there listening probably is looking this up right now. There's a number of what it costs to house people. And like you said, if we don't do these things and then people just keep cycling back through the system, one, it's so traumatic for the individual, their family, their children, all that. But the cost to society, you're already paying for it.
Exactly.
Person goes back 2-3 times, the number's astronomical. And that's one person. We have to think about how to approach these things in a very different way. And we already have the data. We know what it costs. So come up with something logical. What does a person really need coming out of prison to get a jump start on it? Like, what do they really need? I like your idea, about the working thing, or when you're inside, maybe you're working and maybe you're earning a little more money, and maybe part of that money goes towards that bank account that you get when you get out. Maybe part of it then goes to the prison to pay for stuff, right? Like there's got to be some businesswoman or businessman out there that could come up with a formula, to say you're spending X, and if you tried this, you could reinvest some of this money and reduce the recidivism rate.
Oh, exactly. I mean, that's the thing, right? It's I have a neighbor that him and I would talk about this stuff, and he doesn't want to have. He gets upset because he has to pay for people that are incarcerated, right?
Right.
And then I bring up these ideas of like if we just help them when they get out, and then it's just, well, I don't want to do that either. Well, as I said earlier, a majority of these people are coming out and going to live out here, in the free world.
Right.
And so, do you want them committing more crimes? Do you want them to, the less crimes they commit, those kind of things, the better off everybody is.
Exactly. I totally agree with you. Yeah. If only we could rule the world, we could really make some real changes.
It is promising.
Yeah.
With the governor that he's willing to look at it from the way that he's looking at it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think too, and that's where I think peer support can come in, right? You know what I mean? Is that if we could figure out that way, if the guy comes out, he has a little money in the bank, and he has a peer supporter for that first 30 days. You know what I mean? And get him acclimated back into life, then those chances are that guy will make it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. There's one other thing I forgot to mention. So the governor, when governors come in, they appoint new people to all these different positions in the state. Governor Gianforte appointed a new head of the Department of Corrections, which is actually somebody who I know. It's Sheriff Brian Gutkin from Gallatin County. And he's a really good guy. Brian Gutkin is a really good guy. He was the sheriff when we ran our peer support program where we worked with the sheriff's office. And I met with him, had his, still do probably have his cell phone number, he's like, if you ever need anything, just call, So I saw that the governor had appointed him head of corrections. So that's another positive thing that I see in Montana. I think he gets it. I think a lot of the things we're talking about, I think he gets, and he sees some of the broader issues, societal issues. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, and when you exactly, because then I think with the new administration in the United States, they're talking about not as many more private prisons either.
Yeah, so, I saw that. I couldn't remember exactly. Did they say not as many, or did they, or what was it exactly? Because I
think they're going to try to get rid of most of that.
Yeah, the private ones, right? Because my understanding is the private ones, they're just in it for the money, right? They're just trying to make profit.
Yeah, they're a for-profit, right?
Okay, yeah.
They're terminating the federal private prison contract.
Ah, okay. So that's what it is. So that will go a long ways. Yeah.
Federal side. There's a few private prisons here in the state of Montana. There's Shelby, and I think Glendive might be one. And so, those are things that, okay, so now if they do that, then there's less space now for incarcerated people, right? So now where do we put those?
True.
I don't, in the state of Montana, I don't know how many people are being, sentenced to the prison today, right?
Right.
So that's something to think of too, right?
Right.
That's why the peer support and community-minded supervision is going to become more important.
Right.
More people are going to be out.
Well, this is a great topic, and we will see if there are further changes, in the criminal justice system or opportunities for peer support. Because MPN, we have a criminal justice peer supporter training, so we're hoping to put that back out because we're anticipating a big need for criminal justice peer supporters. So Greg and I will probably get back on here and do another podcast if there's more developments later on this year.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely interested in that for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much for being a guest, and what a great conversation. And thanks so much to our audience for listening in. Check out our other podcasts there, whether you're on our website or iTunes or SoundCloud. Every week we release another podcast and different topics and different guests and different conversations. If you have ideas for a podcast, feel free to contact us, email us, or give us a call, and we'll try to accommodate. Again, Greg, thanks for coming on. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks so much, and we'll catch everybody next time.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.
Recovery works, recovery is possible.
Recovery is possible.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.
Recovery works.
And recovery is possible.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.
Recovery is possible.